And I think Neil will come in a second. All right, now we're live. Now it's serious. What's up, fellas?
Everything good? Feels good to be home, man.
I'll bet, yeah. You were on like a
How long were you away?
9-month world tour.
Yeah, it was like 7 weeks total, non-stop
Wow.
basically. So yeah, and I need to lose some weight and some exercise because I think I've been drinking for 7 weeks in a row. Um,
Oof. That's
can't complain.
yeah. It's good, and sometimes you're just like, man, I could just use a break.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm trying to do now. Like some downtime, just focusing on coding and get things sorted.
Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing to like meet you guys, everybody, like in Austin. Uh, this past 7 weeks were kind of blur. Like meet so many people, so many interesting people, so many like learned so much. It was insane.
Yeah.
I had such a good blast. I'm so happy that I managed to make the trip and looking forward for the next one.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's gonna be fun. Are we so we're doing what's up, Neil? We got a couple next ones, right? We got the Helium house in New York, maybe in September.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think late September, right?
Yeah, and then we've got what's the other one? London is Helium Shed. You guys are gonna talk a
Yeah.
little
Well,
bit
I think
about that today.
we may be rebranding that. But
Oh,
yeah,
really? No more Shed.
yeah. No more shed.
Did you guys get some? You got some funding, but they were like, "Hey, this is contingent upon a different name."
No. Neil suggested a more professional approach.
Okay.
So yeah.
Over here, sheds to us are like workshops, and I personally think workshop might be of a better name for it. Workshops around developing helium devices. Although shed to us is like that, you go
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
to your shed in the garden, not your workshop. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, we've discussed lab as well, so we'll see. We'll
Okay.
come up with a cool
When is
name.
that supposed to happen?
November.
November. Okay.
November.
We're looking at tying it in with is it Token 49, 9th and 10th of November in London.
Okay.
So,
So it's probably going to be like right after Solana breakpoint in Lisbon.
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Well, we
It's
got
yeah,
good.
yeah. It's from the seventh, for the fourth into the seventh of November in Lisbon. It's going to be a breakpoint, and I guess I need to go to London now. What a sad news.
Yeah. All right. So we got some folks in the comments. We got our usual suspects: Jeff and Siegfried and Kevin and Bomber, Jay. Right on. Good to see you guys, and Bo. And then we got Gorang. I don't think I've seen you before, Gorang, but he says, "Please talk about state of the network. No BS." I don't know that we're gonna get there, buddy. This is mostly BS. Um, but we'll do our level best. So let's see. The state of the network right now is that the chain is stopped, if I'm understanding that correctly. And
Yes.
yeah. And do we don't know why. I just saw an announcement that 𝐒𝐄𝐒 put out saying, "Hey, we stopped. We're going to skip a block." But
a little bit. We know a lot of the validator members have gone offline. They all seem to be from one ISP that's having issues. The code is there to skip and force them to elect a new group, and
okay,
we're just slowly going through that process at the moment. So, a couple of hours max.
okay. And is that does
Wait,
anyone or do we know kind of who that specific validator group is? Is that the group I'm a part of? Is that my Blockjoy and StakeJoy just took a minute off and now it's broke the whole thing?
I think in validator talk they were talking about Interserve. I think was the name of the company.
Okay, well, as long as it's not mine, I'm
Interserve, I
okay.
yeah,
think that's
Yeah.
it.
I think those are the ones that StakeJoy uses. Is like the one that have
Oh,
1.5 terabytes of RAM. Because the thing of
Oh,
the magic the StakeJoy managed to do with the validator is like have many validators inside one server. So then once one validator gets into consensus group, they put all like resources into that container or whatever they use. Um,
okay,
so if their server goes down, like a bunch of validators go down at the same time.
okay.
So that's like the bad side of the centralization, right?
Yeah. It's more efficient until it's not.
Yeah. I mean, I could be wrong. That's what I imagine that could have happened.
Yeah.
Um,
And I mean, shout out to StakeJoy or BlockJoy, whatever they call themselves. I'm not moving. It's awesome. I haven't done a lick of work, and that thing spits out, I don't know, 15 HNT a month or something for my split of it. So it's It's good enough. It's
Yeah,
fine.
I definitely don't want to run my validator. That's way too much work. I already do the ETL stuff,
Yeah.
and that's enough for me.
Yeah. You got enough going on.
That's enough for anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
All right. So
even
with,
like updating through the concert, you know.
Yeah.
yeah, you can have it. Dave, what's outside of the network being stopped? What's going on with stats?
Wow, it's been an interesting week. There were a couple of chain vars that were issued last week that had an effect on how things were progressing. One of them was to fix an issue previously introduced with the H3 DEX and targeting. So they kind of overdid it on the targeting, and rural hotspots were on fire, earning
right.
an awful lot of coin. So they've introduced another chain variable to address that. And alongside that, they've increased the POC rate from 250 to 350 a block, which that, and in conjunction with the fix they did for H3 DEX is a bit of a sticking plaster, really. That they wanted to put as little effort in as possible and concentrate on fixing the bigger issue by taking POC off chain. So during the week, what we have seen, I think the H3 DEX situation still exists. There's still hotspots that are beaconing considerably more than others, and the increase in POC rate is kind of disguising that a little bit. But the POC rate, for example, it's increased 40%. But the number of hotspots that are participating hasn't increased 40% on a daily basis. You'd expect some sort of an alignment, but because of the issue with the H3 DEX, we're still seeing about 20% increase. Some days, although you can sort of look at it squint-eyed and say actually it's only gone up 7%.
Don't you go laughing at me looking at this thing squint-eyed.
Yeah. It's very difficult to tell after just a few days. It seems to have settled out around 230, 240,000 hotspots beaconing per day now, which is up from around 190,000 before the POC increase. So it's around 20%. Again, just before they increased the rate, the beaconing hotspots dropped dramatically, so it was stable. It dropped dramatically. They've introduced this chain var, and things have stabilized pretty quickly, up at that sort of 230, 240,000 hotspots beaconing per day. The number of witnessing hotspots hasn't changed significantly. So I pumped some stats out yesterday on Twitter, showing sort of the effect that's happened over the last 4 days. I looked again this morning, and things are still pretty stable. Interesting thing to note is that I looked over, I think it was a 7-day period, at how many hotspots had participated, and it was around 500,000 hotspots. And there's 880,000 hotspots on the next network. So there's a significant number that are still not participating in any form of POC. And where previously that was reasonably stable, it seems to be diverging now. I think looking at the graph that I did yesterday, you're getting at best 57% of hotspots participating on a daily basis, which it's quite
It's not good.
quite bad. It's not good at all.
No.
So I think some work needs to be done to really understand. I don't know how you do that, and how you figure out what the issue is. But I think there needs to be some effort involved in trying to understand what's happening. Are people simply switching off? Is there an underlying problem there? People will complain that they've not beaconed in the last 4, 5, 10 days. I think that's perhaps to be expected at the moment, but I would equally expect that people would be witnessing, unless there are an awful lot of lone wolves, like 300,000 lone wolves that don't see any witnessing. So, but I can't see that. I think see Dan's face, and I'm like, nah, that's not it. So I think it's worth investigating, but I'm not sure how to investigate or who's best placed to do that investigation.
Dig it.
But yeah,
Hey, I'm seeing in the
stats.
in the comments this question about when the sync will turn off, and I see that all the time. And I know it's not related specifically to the stats thing, but any of you guys have any idea? I mean, that's just not going to happen until we finish the transition.
This week.
Oh
yeah, I thought I saw an announcement. Yeah, I thought Coke's announced something that it was going to be soon.
They fixed the mux and they're testing it with makers, so that should go on this week, pending the tests all going all right. So
then it's in the can.
If Joey was
it
here,
is in the can.
it's in the can. Yeah.
I don't know why we're even discussing it. It's good. And then Iraq.
It's in testing now, and obviously I can't wait for that. Losing the sync, data transfer is so bad right now because hotspots are falling behind on sync, so they can't transfer data.
Yeah.
So having Mux on for my business is brilliant.
Yep. Yeah.
Can't wait.
Cool. Well, I think that wraps up the state of the kind of network from the technical side of the stats side. Let's talk of Daniel. What happened last week?
I don't remember, man. I'm just kidding. I mean, I wish you guys have managed to come. It was actually super interesting to go to be like in this LoRa event. It was very surprising that still a lot of people don't know about Helium. Even
so let's set the stage first. Hang on a second. Sorry, I should have done this. You went to the LoRaWAN World Expo. You and Joey were there. A couple other Helium folks. Max was there as well. And you guys got to see basically the side of LoRaWAN that none of us ever look at, which is the non-Helium side. Yeah,
I know exactly. So it was 2 days Wednesday and Thursday last week in Paris. Mm-hmm. The LoRa Expo. I think it was also 2 years without that event. I think they used to happen more often in the past, and because of COVID, it didn't happen. It's a little bit more suit, not so much like geeky people like us building things.
But it's actually not crypto.
I mean, crypto doesn't matter, right? There's nothing related to crypto. It's a lot of like business people more than makers, let's say.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
So, but it was interesting to see a lot of people haven't heard about Helium before. There was some makers there. There was like a rack, of course, displaying all the Wiz blocks and other products. There was like 𝗪𝗵𝘁 Seed Studio was there with a lot of the cool gadgets that they sell. And then I think Rack and Seed are the one that's most fun. And then there was 𝗪𝗵𝘁 as well there with the hotspot. I think they have a new hotspot that looks like the Rack one, quite small. They also have the 5G one that they were displaying there. Bro one was there. Yeah, exactly. That's the new one right from 𝗪𝗵𝘁.
How is that super new? That looks like the original one that I got, or is that just a little bit bigger?
No, it looks like a rack. The other ones are massive. I've actually got an old 𝗪𝗵𝘁 here as well. Hang on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think we found two hotspots that aren't connected. 3 hotspots that aren't connected. Here we go. We're starting.
I was going to say.
I've got a box back there somewhere for the Bobcats and Deb.
Yeah. So here, where you see, here you have like a gold mint, and here you have like the Freedom Fly one as well.
Yep.
Yesterday took apart like a rack. Anyway, just like playing around with things. So going back to the LoRa Expo, it was a very interesting talk. A lot of people that didn't know about Helium. A lot of people are there. There was guys from Party Labs as well. A lot of people flew from the US. From the Helium team, from the Nova team was mostly business dev people because they're trying to get usage into the network. So going to that event was super important to get people to know about Helium and okay, we have this network that is insanely crazy. That was super interesting. There was like the foundation got a prize, but I don't know if maybe I'll wait until if Joey comes up because I think he should be the one to talk about that because it was pretty interesting the prize that they got. There was some really cool projects that were built in LoRa that was called DRYAD, DRYAD. There's like a fire detection project that the guy has been doing a lot of development for the past 2 years, a lot of like AI and like a mesh network. So have one gateway in the edge of the forest, and they have like a lot of mesh networks around the forest and a bunch of sensors. They're like 50 cents each. Sorry, $50, not 50 cents. But with a lot of software, and then they can prevent like smoke detectors that they can know. I don't know, a few minutes when the fire started to already notify the fire department or the rangers or whatever. So that was super, super cool. There was a lot of Hotspotty fans there. That's super cool as well. I got super happy just walking and people stopped to talk to me. We made a lot of friends, people that definitely going to be in New York as well. So I think a lot of people didn't. I mean, New York was announced quite a last minute for people to plan from, especially from Europe, like right, 𝗍𝗲. And
Austin, yeah,
so those people,
100%. It was just very quick. We're having this event, and then like, oh, okay.
yeah,
Oh, I
exactly.
haven't got a passport.
So how's the passport going, by the way?
I've ordered it. It's coming. I should be at New York.
Okay, cool.
Hey,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
will
So I
be.
think,
He will be at New York.
You will
yeah,
be.
worst case, you're going to Dave's like suitcase, right? So yeah, a lot of people from Europe, mainly that didn't go to the Helium House, told me they're planning to be in the new one in New York. Now they have more time.
Yep.
We met some people from Bulgaria, from like all over the place, Slovakia, really cool people that we met there. Had a good time. And then there was like, of course, 2 days of happy hour. The first day was happy hour organized by the event. There's like a lot of networking. The second night was a happy hour organized by Nova and the foundation, which is like all the Helium fans and people getting together. A lot of people building cool stuff. There's some people like the guy from Slovakia. He did a bunch of like off-grid setups, and that was super interesting. Maybe I can send Nick the link afterwards.
Yeah,
You
totally.
can post in the show notes and stuff like
Yep.
that. LoRa is the biggest low power wireless network in the world right now. I think the stats that they had was like 70 million out of 188 or something like that. So pretty, like a little bit less than half of the whole market, comparing like other other projects like narrowband, etc. Let me see. I'm just like trying to remember everything that happened, right? There was like a really cool project that is called ELO, ELO, that they wanted to do LoRa on satellite. They have like one antenna that shoots the satellite, and the satellites around the globe talk to each other, and that you're gonna have pretty much like a world coverage through those satellites with LoRa. And I was just imagine to have like one hotspot that just covers the entire world. That would be really nice. So they should try to figure out a way to do some partnership with Helium in that way, because then that could be pretty interesting and pretty profitable as well for the people who are deploying the satellites, right? Hopefully.
Yeah.
And
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, if it's not profitable, they're not going to do it, right?
yeah, exactly. I mean, the roaming, do some kind. So there's a lot of people doing a lot of different kinds of roaming with Helium for other projects, as other companies doing roaming, and that's something that I think Helium is the Nova Labs teams are focused a lot into getting roaming partners, because you close one partner, it can be like millions of devices right away.
Yep.
Um,
And that's what happened with, was it Senate? And did we have another like big one that signed on to Helium in the last year?
I think it was 𝗍𝐿𝐼.
𝗍𝐿𝐼, yeah.
There's, I
That's
think there's like three.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are three big ones. I don't remember the last one, but yeah, those are massive companies, and there's still a lot to grow. IoT is still kind of early, I think. Like, we've been talking about IoT for the past 10 years, but until your washing machine has LoRa on it, we're still not there, but soon.
Yeah, it's a super good point, because I got asked. I mean, I saw this in the Gristle King server today. Is one of the guys like, "Hey, what is your outlook on the long term of IoT?" And I think what we all kind of figured out from the Helium gold rush of the last 2 years is that IoT as a use case for a normal person is not there, right? It's not kind of ready. It's ready for someone like Neil, who can build a business on it, or Daniel, you, or Dave, who can kind of fiddle with it. But even then, there's still a fair amount of fiddling. Like, Neil and I have been doing the TrackPack thing, and I think most of it is working really well, but it's still not, it's not quite there where it's push button easy yet, which is nothing against TrackPack. I think it's a fantastic thing, and I've got whatever 5 more of these things to onboard and hand out around San Diego. So that's going to be super cool. But that was one of the takeaways. And then, Daniel, you go to this LoRa event, and I think one of the guys in the chat, 𝗍𝗶𝘁, I would say it Ibiza, but I know you guys put a TH in there. He was like, "Hey, I was there," and I think he took tons of pictures of all these different sensors. So it's like it's just coming, but it's not here, not ready for prime time yet.
Yeah, I'll try to see if I can get the picture. They had this like massive board, and the makers, the people just put their own sensors in there. There was like a lot of things, all kinds of sensor for everything that you can imagine, right? Kind of like all kinds of gases, water leak detections, pH sensor. I mean, you name it. But one thing that we always talk that hardware takes much longer than software to develop. So I can imagine that there's a lot of companies that after they start, I mean, even after Helium, right, or like a little bit before, they're still like, oh shit, now they have this massive network, we can just use it. But they're probably still like on the development phase or like prototyping or, you know, waiting for the PCB to arrive so they can solder. So that takes much longer.
And let's go back too, because this is something I've seen with the parametric devices, the people counters, is they work. I guess they work really well on TTN in Europe, but they do not work on Helium in the US. And when I talk to parametric about it, they're like, you know, we're not really sure about Helium. Like, what is this thing? We don't know it very well. And to me, that's astonishing. But then I'm an idiot, and my only exposure to LoRa is Helium. And it kind of lines up with what you're saying, is that a lot of these people, you're walking around, I mean, at a LoRa network or world conference, they still don't know about Helium. So pretty crazy.
I mean, they're used to a completely different model, though, aren't they? You know, they're used to this model where they provide the coverage, they install the gateways, they do all the site surveys, they provide the sensors, they provide the maintenance. So to swap to having products ready for Helium is going to take a while.
Yeah, and that's.
I mean, the good thing is that they can just take their own. So if there is an end case, right, a farm, for example, they can just put their own like Helium hotspot and put the sensors. But a lot of them don't know about that yet. I think that's the work for community and also the business developer to go after these people. And yeah, I mean, I talked to a lot of people like deploying in Cyprus as well. Mm-hmm. They have like coverage, pretty much the whole island is covered.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what else. But yeah, overall, it was super interesting. I think I want to go there next year if they have the same event. I think it was very beneficial for everyone. Like, not because I'm not building LoRa stuff, right? I'm doing like hotspotty for helping the Helium ecosystem to grow, LoRa, whatever comes next. But it was just to being around those people building, or like getting around and exchanging knowledge. I think those things are super valuable. And of course, I'm always like brainstorming people's, I don't know, like brainwashing people with Helium, right? Like brain, like this. But I think, I realized that I really want to go to this kind of events. They're super good to just pick on people's brain and you learn so much.
Yeah. I listened to this podcast the other day about how you come up with new ideas and how you get to what they call greatness. And one of the things was, it doesn't usually happen in a group, is that when groups kind of work together to try and come to consensus, you come to a consensus about what is something that everyone can agree to, but usually no one fully likes completely. And really the massive benefit about working with a network of people is that you get exactly like what happened to you, is you get exposed to all these ideas. And now you can go back to Lisbon and say, okay, and in the podcast, they call these ideas stepping stones, is they're like, oh, I didn't know about this part of the network or this part of hardware. I didn't know that this person existed or this solution was there. And then you build something new because now you have new access to knowledge. And it was something super cool that I kind of took away from that. It sounds like you got to experience it, and that's always a really exciting time.
Yeah, give me the goosebumps here, man, talking about this stuff. I mean, I'm not completely, but like me and Max, we spend a lot of time brainstorming. After every day that happened something, we spend we had like one dinner in Paris and we walked home for over an hour, just like going crazy, like 1 a.m. planning out these crazy things. And I think we changed our roadmap from the beginning of the trip until now. Like we molded our roadmap quite a lot.
Yeah. From
talking to people, like meeting different companies. We met people from Demo, we met people from HiveMapper, some people from Poland, some from, of course, Nova, Helium. Like there's this decentralized infrastructure. I wouldn't even say like DY anymore. Because it's not necessarily only wireless. Right. We call it like decentralized infrastructure that it's happening, and there's a lot of things new coming. So we want to have Hotspotty to be like the fleet management for the decentralized infrastructure of the future. So we're trying to figure out how we can like help everybody basically, right, to achieve their goals and make more money, if that's the crypto side, or just spread the network.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
But
it's
yeah,
really cool to see all this stuff and just exciting to see. I know that the Bo who was there was dropping pictures in the Gristle Crew chat, and I was like, oh my god, look at that sensor, look at that sensor, oh my god, check out that sensor, that's so cool. And it's just like, man, there's just so much that most of us don't know. Like I'm still, stuck on like, oh, try an LHT65, which is like, yeah, that's a cool sensor to start getting on the network with, but that is not by a long shot the end of the network. So
we're still getting started. Yeah.
Yes, one of the things that we're looking at doing, thanks to Neil's idea in London, is providing sort of a demo sensor setup. So Neil was thinking about having a shed built, and we'll have a door sensor on the shed, and we can then put an off-grid hotspot on the roof with solar panels and battery monitoring. Have the hotspot working, then have a little allotment set out in front with soil sensors, and so all sorts of different sensors in a working environment to demonstrate the capability of the network. And the sort of diversity of all the sensors. So that's something that we're looking to try and do for London. So yeah, it's quite exciting. And I was at a rail conference last week, looking at trying to get people interested in cybersecurity for rail, which was the dullest day ever. No disrespect to my work, but as I was walking around, there was a stand, and they had a little device on it that looked a bit like a tracker, and I was looking at it, and I was looking at their presentation, and it was a tracker using LoRa, but it was only using it locally on a site.
right.
So they were looking at tracking assets on the site and people on the site. I said, well, okay, but what if it goes off the site? And they said, well, it's all right because it will be then in transition to another site. And I said, well, no, it might be in transition to somebody's house, at which point you've lost it. And you don't know where it is. And by utilizing the Helium network, they could actually find those things. So they're sort of developing in isolation and not knowing about Helium. So I was at a rail conference on Works Time talking about Helium last week, which was quite cool.
Yeah, it's amazing how it kind of gets into any conversation that you want it to get into, or people are interested. Let's see. Let's talk about this Helium shed thing and 𝗶𝗴. I'm seeing your criticisms of Helium, and I think some of them are good. Some of them are you just haven't read enough and you don't understand the network enough, and that's fine. You're saying it's super centralized and controlled by a small group and failed by validators. Those I would say are generally wrong. But there are some elements of truth to that, and we can hit that in a second. But let's keep on this Helium workshop piece in London, because when you guys, Dave and Neil, when you had laid out all the sensors you were going to do, I was in the comments typing like, oh, you should do this sensor, and then I saw you'd already listed it. And it's pretty cool to think about walking into a small building, whether that's something you kind of hastily erected or you bought it, whatever, Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever the kind of garden workshop thing is there, and just fill it with sensors and see how many different things you can sense, and really imagine the future of what LoRa can do. And that's a pretty exciting thing.
Yeah, the idea behind it was really to just kind of showcase what these people can, take and do from home. Weather stations, 𝗪𝗏𝑋M is coming. We've got, smart watering. Like the sensor channel is full of people trying to get smart agriculture going. Just a small home, grows of vegetables and things, and giving them the tools to show, look, you can do this at home. This is something that you can do. It's going to increase awareness of what's possible on the Helium network, and really, get those ideas together for people to be able to, say, right, I can do this type of sensor at home really easily, or, and it's not just. I think at this stage, it's not about getting all of these huge use cases on board. It's about getting people interested in it at home. The educational piece is much bigger than worrying about having a huge number of sensors at the moment, because it's about getting people to know that this network exists and how to use it, to then take it to their businesses and say, right, we could do this so easily,
Yeah.
And we're just missing those education pieces. I always say, crypto was great for the cold start of Helium, but we have a problem with the cold start of LoRa sensors and how to use them. And we need to figure out how to fix that and make it so people can say, right, I can do all these things easily from home.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting... Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, it was great to see the sensors in Austin all over the walls displayed nicely. But I think to have a soil sensor in some soil at an event and be able to chuck water on it and see what happens and to have a weather station and to spin the anemometer and see that you can get that live data transferring through to wherever you want to put it. So I think it's quite an exciting idea.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of rad stuff going on. I mean, that's part of what we're doing in the Gristle crew, which is this education piece, which Daniel's now on. Oh, Joey's coming in. Cool. Is this idea that next week, next Saturday, the crew together is building out Joey's idea. Funny that you just come on, Super Joey, which is the
just on time.
Yeah, this guy right here is, we're building it out as a group, and the intent is not necessarily that everyone is able to monitor air quality in their home. It's that, hey, you learn a little bit more about using the Helium network, and you do it in a group and do it together, because there's all kinds of sticking points, right? Whether it's soldering or whether it's the software side or the hardware side, or like there's millions of different, not millions, there's probably 20 different things that are, that would stop a normal person. But you have Daniel on there, you got me, you got whoever else comes in and helps out with that. And it's a super cool thing to spread that knowledge and spread that education. And we all learn something about it. So I think it's really important. Anyone watching this, anyone listening to this as a podcast, is like, hey, just start doing it. And when you get stuck, reach out for help. And there's a really big community of helping people.
Start by doing, right? Yeah.
So with that, Joey,
I'm really excited you're doing that.
Welcome to the show, Doc.
Yeah, thank you.
Tell me, what did you? We got Daniel's thing on LoRaWAN Expo. What did you see out there?
I wish I knew what Daniel talked about, but
We'll
yeah,
see
it was
if it
fun.
lines up. Did you guys go to the same thing?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, he had a whole different experience. I was wearing my 𝗨𝗏𝗁 shirt on day one of the expo, and people were like, "Oh, you work for 𝗨𝗏𝗁." I'm like, damn, I wore the wrong shirt, so I had to wear the Helium shirt this time.
Should have worn a Gristle shirt.
Yeah. Yep. No, you got the rep at Consensus. So
yeah, you crushed it there. That was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. So you gave a talk.
Yeah,
and
the
then
talk's
good.
Yeah, like I gave, so the first day I was just like attendee talking to a million people. Just like the first day, like had a chat with like the Semtech team, and then I had a stack of Helium stickers, and I was like, "Oh, do you guys want some of these before like I hand them all out?" They took the entire stack, like they were excited. So the Semtech team is incredibly stoked on what we're doing with the network and just the sort of like the rapid rollout that we've had. They're really excited to see how it can continue to scale, to sort of like just get more pervasive and it be like just like a really big resource for people wanting to build LoRaWAN stuff. I mean, think of the like they sell the chips, right? What more do they want than like a billion other people deploying sensors on this network that we're building? So that was really exciting, just seeing like the level of enthusiasm from those guys. And like we set up a meeting for the next day. We talked about a bunch of other cool stuff. Yeah, so I sort of got ahead of myself. The second day we gave a talk, and it was very much just like, what is Helium? How do you build like a community incentivized network? How did that get us where we are today? And I kept it sort of brief. Unfortunately, the presentation, like the AV text, didn't show my notes for the presentation, so I just had to kind of like YOLO my way through the whole thing, which was real fun. But apparently, it was well received, and then opened it up for QA. And Daniel was my plant in the audience, and he came up and asked about how grants work for the Helium Foundation. He just threw me a softball.
Nice.
And then everyone else sort of jumped in and had a ton of really good questions. Everything from like, how do you deal with, fixed rate pricing on a dynamic network, like all that, just like, these are all super smart, like IoT folks. So they got right to the heart of it. It was a lot of fun.
Were there any questions that you were like, oh, I hadn't thought of that, but here's an answer, or that you had to go back to the team and say like, how are we gonna kind of respond to this?
Yeah, well, there was one scenario where I was sort of answering. Somebody was asking like, well, why do LoRaWAN network operators like your Actility, your Tectena, like all of that, why are they roaming? Like, what's the value there? Like, are they getting enough like of service level agreements, things like that? And I was kind of like giving my answer. And then this guy standing next to me, he's like, can I add something to that? And so he starts talking about like this additional redundancy. It turns out it's the guy that runs 𝗱𝗃. And so he's just like stoked on it, right? And the actility guys, like all of them are like very excited. They're just paying a relatively low amount every week or so, a month, like just kind of as they run through like some fixed data credit spend. And they're just getting like a full second set of all the data that they need. And very often that's a huge addition to what they would have been getting otherwise. Like I'm in Tallinn, Estonia right now, sort of killing a week before the next thing that I have to do. And the network is incredible here. I've been walking around with a mapper. There's a ton going on. But like all of these hotspots are doing data transfer. Like there's stuff going on here. So somebody's running something over here.
Also, forget you got a prize.
You don't know
right?
what.
I was saying, like, you don't forget to tell they also the foundation got a prize.
Yeah,
Another softball for
day.
you from Daniel. You slipping a $5 under the table?
Daniel's just keeping me on point here. It was awesome having Daniel. I hung out with those guys so much when I was in Paris. We had fun. Didn't get in too much trouble. But
what's your prize? What's your prize? Let's stay out of the
the danger
okay.
Zone. So the Helium Foundation, generally the Helium Project, was awarded an innovation. What's it called? The Innovation Award. And so it was co-awarded to us and Senate, who is one of our roaming partners. And it was sort of celebrating this was in 2021. We did a roaming agreement in North America and covered 6,000 cities. And I haven't run the metrics on how many cities we're covering now, but it's a lot higher than 6,000. I'll tell you that.
Right.
So
68,000. I checked before.
That's global. So to be fair, but
okay,
we're
That's
over.
pretty much how Americans think of the world,
cities,
though. It's like the
probably.
global is just like a bigger, less important part of America. So I'll take a 10x growth.
Yeah, it's probably close, right? So they were running trucks, like delivery trucks. They're doing asset tracking around North America, and so for us, for Senate to be able to leverage Helium in that sort of pursuit,
pretty big deal.
Now we got this nice little award that we can put on somebody's desk somewhere. But the important thing here is just like continually growing validation in front of this enterprise audience, and throughout the conference, there's a mix of people who'd like heard of Helium and were like super stoked and were mining Helium.
Yep.
One guy, he's like, Joey, I've seen you on the 𝗪𝗁𝗁 crew.
Yep.
So he might be watching this video. So I had a good chat with him. But you're a globally recognized entity now, Nick.
State of the network is famous.
And I am.
I like it. Yeah. Love it. Hey, I'm seeing something. Go ahead. Go ahead, Joey. Sorry.
Oh, just to add, like, there's people who know about the network, there's people not. And I think those were the really exciting ones for me. And, finding skepticism and talking through it. Like I talked with a guy from Swisscom. So it's a network provider who's covered the entire populace of Switzerland. And he's just like, well, what about this? What about that? And it had enough good answers for him that he's like, wow, yeah, this is super cool. So
it's interesting enough. And I think one of the things that I get stuck on is I'm totally a Helium fanboy. Is I'm like, no, Helium's the best no matter what. And then we get this comment like from this 𝗶𝗵𝘀𝗀 fella who's like, hey, what about this, this, and this? And at first I'm like, just dismiss him. And I'm like, no. The way that we get better is we have these folks on to this show and we talk about it and we see if we can answer their questions in the same way, Joey, that you had answered the Swisscom's guys' questions. And some of them come from just not knowing. And some of them come from like, hey, yeah, there's problems with the network. Helium is not by a long shot a perfect network yet.
Yeah, and like part of that for me is like, we're talking about roaming, and I was like, well, look, we don't have like the net IDs on chain yet, so we've got to get that together, and then like we can have some really cool stories to share with you. But we're still building the thing.
Yep. And then Dave, are you seeing this Falcon Punch's question? Is there a metric to see how much of the transfer on the network is from roaming? Is that something that you think you could answer? Or Joe?
I could go away and have a look, but I think Joey's just mentioned if we've not got all the data in the blockchain, then it can't be done. I'll have a look. I'll see if there's anything in there, but there's nothing that springs to mind in any of the ETL tables that might be useful to look at that data.
You could try to filter out state channel closes that were attached to particular OUIs, or so I don't know. I don't know if it's all on one or if they're separated out though.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll have a look. I'll have a look after the show. Give me something to do this evening.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that I see a lot of, and that you guys, Daniel and Joey, got to see, is that there's all kinds of companies working on LoRaWAN that most of us don't ever get to see. And one of them, there's this guy in the chat, Murugan Rajendran. Hopefully I'm not saying that butchering that too much. But he was talking to me today on Discord. He's like, hey, I've got this thing in India and we're putting together a business proposition and whatever it is. And I don't know if it's hotspots or sensors or what it is, but it just goes to this thing that there are so many people working, not in like the public limelight, on this network and working to bring solutions to this network. And just because you don't see them on State of the Network or you don't see them in Discord doesn't mean they don't exist. Like if I had to kind of put some blood on it, I'd say there's at least 1,000 companies working on some kind of solution that will go on Helium. And of those 1,000 companies, you've probably heard of, maybe 3 or 5.
I mean, that's one of the reasons, right, of the decentralized network. You don't need to ask permission to anyone. You can, if you do it and you tell the community that you're building on top of that, you're going to get some shout outs from the network, from the community and everything. Yep. But you don't have to. You can do whatever. I would guess that most people don't really think about this stuff. They just build their own thing. They sometimes don't even know Discord, or they're just there for some help here and there, but they're building their thing and then they're doing their job, right? And I think that's one of the cool things about Helium is that you don't need to if you don't want to.
Yeah. Yeah, you can, but it's not necessary. All right. Pretty cool stuff. And I think as you guys think of more LoRaWAN stuff that you learned, or if there's anything cool, I know, Daniel, you talked about Dryad and Elo. I'll see if I can dig those up and then drop those links in the description. There is a link in the description. If you refresh it on YouTube, I put it in while we were talking, to the Helium, I don't know what you guys want to call it, Helium workshop, Helium shed. But whatever that is, to kind of show interest for that. So if you guys are watching this later or you're listening to it on podcast, go find the YouTube description and look for the Helium London event thing and sign up using that form. Just to show interest. And Gristle King will sponsor that definitely. With at least one t-shirt.
Is that one each?
Yeah. Maybe. I've got a bunch. There's a guy, I felt so bad about this, who had bought, Timo had bought a couple shirts, and I managed to completely lose his order. And he just wrote me 2 days ago. He's like, hey man, are you ever going to send those shirts out? And I was like, oh my God, super sorry. So there's still some shirts left in the box that are going out today. So, okay. Let's shift a little bit to 5G stuff. And I'll talk about what I got over the weekend. Is I put up a 5G unit outdoor. I think I dropped the videos Saturday morning. And there's some cool stuff in 5G, and also a bunch of new questions. And the cool stuff was that if you've deployed a LoRa hotspot outside, you can deploy a 5G hotspot outside. There wasn't anything new about it as far as, there's not some new cable or some new tool that you need to use. If you have the, cable making tools that you use to run Ethernet and LoRa, and you have the, screwdriver and wrenches, you are good to go. There's nothing super fancy.
But you have to make sure that when you are installing it, that you do the obligatory ninja roll.
I think I'm going to add that to all of my my GK videos going forward. So that was a fun one. That came from this guy Booger Lips on Discord, who's like, "Are you going to do a ninja roll?" Or he'd said something about a ninja roll. I'm like, "All right, I'm putting that in." But the other thing is that I didn't test the coverage on that. I didn't have an easy way to test it right away, and then I came home and this guy on Twitter had sent me a pollen unit. And so I put that up on the house as well and was mapping that out. And it hit me just how small the coverage is. Because that's a 5G. It's the same, 3.55 to 3.7. And this will apply to all CBRS stuff in the US. Is that provides coverage in front of my house and down to the end of the block and maybe a quarter mile down the street. And that's it. And I live in, a neighborhood with mostly single-story houses, plenty of mature trees, lots of palm trees. But I've got a LoRa unit on the same roof that has connected 200 kilometers away up to north of Los Angeles. And this thing, it can't get out of my neighborhood. And so as we look forward to the 5G installs, no matter what network you're putting them on, it's something to really think about. Is I'm going to have to kind of recalibrate what's important and what's not, and how to think about putting these units in. And that's going to, I'm assuming, go for you guys whenever it finally gets to Europe, is it'll probably be the same kind of spectrum in general and the same kind of...
Hey, I bought a 5G unit today, found a host in the States, so I'm going to be in the 5G game. So,
love it.
You can make it happen. It's good.
Yeah, I was going to ask Neil, because I saw that you had talked about deploying 5G stuff in the States, is how do we make it easy for folks who are not in the US, like Keenan, like you, like whoever, Daniel, who want to do 5G? We got to figure out a way to make it easy to connect with hosts. And maybe heliumjobs.io is one way to do that, but it's certainly not the only way. How did you find your host? Or you just kind of knew him on Discord, or knew her?
Knew him on Discord. So yeah, unfortunately, it's just the easiest way. I mean, there's been groups about in the past that have tried to kind of do that, make it easier for hosts in areas to get hold of hotspots, but they always struggle with the legality and the problems around controlling wallets and things like that. So it's a tricky subject. No one's come up with a really good solution. But I think there's a grant in for someone to do a site for finding hosts. Pretty sure there was anyway.
Yeah. No, that's super cool. And I know one thing you just mentioned was, I mean, my agreement with Keenan and with the host is all verbal. It's just like, hey, we're all going to do a third, and a third. And I kind of made that up when I was sitting on the roof. I'm like, well, what's fair? Probably a third. And Keenan had said, I don't care what I get from this. I just want you to put out content about 5G and help people understand it and do kind of an explainer. But there's nothing written, and there's no, I don't know, like this is one of the things we talked about in the Gristle crew, and we just started sharing agreements across the crew the other day. So if you're on the crew, you can log in and find this Google folder that's got, I think, 4 or 5 different agreements the last time I checked, so you can see what works for you. Now there's some legal hazard there that I got to be really careful about saying, like, hey, this is a good agreement, because some jackass is going to sign up, is going to use that agreement, is going to fuck something up. There you go.
Oh, you've ruined it.
Yeah. It's the no cursing. I looked at it. I'm like, no, I'm doing it. But they're going to screw something up, and then they're going to come complaining that the agreement didn't protect them. So there's got to be, because it's American, we sue each other for cutting our finger off or whatever it is with a bandsaw.
Exactly. And that was one of our worries. If we're deploying in the States, we need good insurance for putting anything over there, because you guys sue like crazy. So
yeah. No, you do have to be careful. And then the other, so yeah, that's part of it. I'm seeing questions in the comments about mapping to scout out good 5G locations. Is that I had a convo yesterday with Dennis, aka 𝗱𝗲𝘁, aka the professional, that gets an early release. So the Gristle crew has it now, but it'll be on YouTube in a week or so, going through all the mapping options. And there's basically, like, if we think about it, there are 2 ways to do it, and you should use both of them. And one is the kind of publicly available maps that are online that you can get. And I think it's like, it might be cellmapper.com, something like that, where you can see where the majors think they have coverage. And then you can either buy a specialized device that's a couple $1,000 or a couple $100, or you can just use an Android phone that has band 48 on it and kind of map around in that way. And I'm guessing, Joey, you know way more about that than I do.
Yeah. I mean, the Android phone thing is, so the Android phone's going to, I think, do a full, I don't know what you can get with that, if you can just sniff for the announces from the towers, or if it's going to do a full join of the tower and then tell you signal strength for just one tower.
Yeah, no, Dennis was talking about it. So I think it's called Cell Network Lite is the app that you can put on Android. And he was, he's holding up his phone with the app on it, and you could see all of the towers around him. You could see the one that he was, that was saying, like, hey, this is the strongest. And then the 2 others that were beneath it. So I think he was getting like -70 was the one he's connected to. And then the others were like -140. They were a little bit away. dBm, if I'm reading that right.
You should see like a half dozen towers usually.
He was, I don't know where it was, somewhere in Texas,
announces, but
yeah, it was. You could kind of scroll through all that stuff. So I think, it's one of those things where I always like to spend a lot of money on some specific tool, but it's a stupid way to go when it comes to these kind of network testing. Is that you should just use an Android phone, buy an S10, I think was what he'd said, a Galaxy S10, and then that's got band 48 on it.
Should be anything made in the past like 3 or 4 years should pretty much do it, I think. Yeah.
Yep. So pretty interesting stuff.
Good. Yeah. Sorry, like one last thing, like before, like you were talking about the service being super weak, right, for the 5G coverage or the CBRS thing. I have this little thing that me and Max were in New York, and then we have to buy like an iPhone.
Yep.
I don't know how to use iPhone very well, but we got this like hummingbird, whatever it's called
Yep.
from Poland, and we were walking around New York trying to look for coverage. We managed to connect a few cells and then do some speed tests and everything, but it was rough. It was pretty hard to like actually find, like, walk 3 steps and then it's gone.
Yeah.
But it was me and him like walking, like in Manhattan. We had the map where it's supposed to have coverage, and then we were testing out. I mean, it was very exciting the moment that we actually saw the bars and
Yeah.
like Poland network showed up on the screen.
Yeah.
So I can't wait for that to happen with Helium as well. But yeah, it's definitely a different game, as you saw, right? Than LoRa.
Yeah. No, it's I don't know. It's exciting because it's new and there's something to learn, and you got to figure out a bunch of new stuff to it. But it's also, I think it's less interesting from, I don't know, like I think of as like an excellent standpoint is the advantage here is going to go with people who have connections to cell towers and kind of big stuff in the city. And I just don't care about that much. So I would rather be like doing some badass thing on a mountain. And I don't think that the 5G stuff that we've got access to, the CBRS side, is conducive to that. So
Yeah, personally, I think LoRa is much more fun to build IoT stuff.
yeah.
But that's my geeky maker brain, right?
Yep.
Um,
And then the last thing that I've got, and we can keep shooting the shit after this, but is the 5G health effects. And I know that there's going to be some eye rolling on this one, but I am getting a lot of questions on like, hey, from my wife, as well as the rest of the world, and she holds about 99% of the sway there. Like, hey, is having this?
I already know I can't put a 5G hotspot at my parents' house. It's not a battle I'm gonna.
Yeah, there's some that won't win, and I mean, I was up in the attic yesterday, like cursing and crawling around, and as I'm in there, like plugging everything in, and it's an 18-inch high crawl space, so you're just like crawling from rafter to rafter. It sucks. Leah's downstairs, and you can hear everything in the attic, and she's like, "Hey, do you really think we should be putting a 5G unit up?" I'm like, "I'm here. It's happening." Like I'm connecting the fry lines. But tomorrow on the Gristle crew, we've got a researcher coming on who's done a bunch of research on 5G, on 3.55 to 3.7 network interference with living organisms. And so far, it doesn't look like it's super bad, but it also doesn't look like it has no effect at all. So from what I've read so far on zebrafish, on embryonic zebrafish, which are not humans, it has a small effect. So we just got to like figure out what's going on and also be straightforward and transparent and honest about it with folks, and show them the science and say, hey, this is what we know, and there's a lot we don't know.
Yeah, I'm super curious to know about that, because like we have 5G like Wi-Fi repeaters and hotspot and modems and everything, right? There's so many wireless going in different frequencies all over the place.
Yep.
Adding the 5G hotspot in your house, I don't think it's adding that much more.
No,
power.
No, I don't think so either. And there was a study done in Spain where it was at a concert or a festival that was covered by short-term 5G, so people setting up towers, and they had lab people walking around with wristbands on their wrists that measured the amount of signal, and I think it was 10 times the amount of signal they normally got, like when the towers weren't there. But it was also, even at the strongest power, it was 1/10 of what is acceptable in the US. So it may be that it's not really like it's there, but it's not really a big deal. And you probably don't want to, raise your child next to a 5G. Like, don't put a 5G unit in the nursery. But having one on top of your house may not be that big of a deal. And we're walking around. I mean, I'm walking around with an access point above my head in my house. I'm getting way more fried than that, if there's any frying to be done, than the 5G unit that's 18 feet above the roof.
I think we need a LoRa sensor for detecting 5G radiation.
Pretty cool.
Well, I want to clarify the 5G part of it, because 5G is a generational indicator.
I'm so loose.
And not a frequency indicator.
Yeah.
Well, and there's a question, 619 OTA asked this about the 5G messing with FAA stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's your millimeter wave 5G deployments. And what was going on those were impacting the radio radio altimeter. So as a plane lands, it's doing a little radar bounce off the ground. And so it was affecting those because those devices didn't have strong enough filters to take out the harmonics of the 5G tower emission.
Right.
But then as far as the frequency, so millimeter wave is just like way higher on the energy spectrum than what is the CBRS that we're deploying in the 3.2, 3.5
to 3.7.
Now.
Yeah, let's put some kind of
3.5,
numbers on
yeah.
that. Is that it's 3.55 to 3.7 gigahertz, and
Yep.
the millimeter wave stuff and higher is like up in the 60 gig. So
Yeah.
we're looking at just a different beast entirely. You know, it's
Yeah.
like how many oranges can you carry from one place to another with a Lamborghini or an elephant? Like, you don't use either for carrying oranges. Maybe you do. I don't.
Yeah. I don't know.
So there's that. Let's see. I think that's all the stuff in the notes. Neil, anything else? You usually have some good stuff to say, but you're always quiet.
I don't think 5G is going to be as massive as people think, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. But
Yep.
with LoRa, we were building a whole new network. There was no usage.
Yep.
With 5G, everywhere that's profitable to do so, they've already got towers. There is in no world will they ever do a fall over to a network that is not under their control when they can use their own. So the better plan is not to go outside. The better plan is to do underserved areas
Yeah.
or inside coffee shops, inside libraries, places that don't have 5G or very bad coverage.
Yep.
That's where it's going to do really, really well as an add-on service to existing coverage.
Yep.
And I mean, it would be a very, very long time before, we can take on those companies. So just be careful about it. Change your mind. You're not trying to get everywhere with brand new coverage. You're trying to add on to existing coverage. That would
Such a
serve
good
you well
point.
for having lots of footfall.
Yeah. And that was one, that's such a good point, Neil. Thank you. That was one thing that came out with the combo with Dennis was just thinking about it differently. And you've got exactly what you said, fill in where it's not there, not try and outperform the people who've been doing this professionally for 40 years. We'll lose that game.
Exactly. And you go around and look everywhere that's good for a tower to go, they've got a tower there. It was picked for that reason. They spent all that money locating it and making sure they have the best coverage. It's just there's some areas that are not financially viable for them to do because of the scale of their industry and the scale of their business. They might spend 100K on getting a tower up, whereas we can spend 2K and put a hotspot up or maybe buy 5 and mesh the area so it does have good coverage. That would be profitable for us, but it wouldn't be profitable for them. So those are the type of areas you really want to try and cover.
Yeah. Yep. The other thing, though, that is confounding the whole thing is that the initial rewards for getting a 5G unit outside, because it'll get mapped, are going to, if I'm understanding that right, are going to be higher than the actual long-term utility that unit will deliver. And so if you're thinking kind of strategically about this, is you're thinking, okay, I'm going to leave right now. I'm going to leave my outdoor 5G unit up, and I'll leave that up until I see POC rewards like start to fire. And then as soon as I see them dropping, the whole time between now and then, I'm looking for another place to transfer that unit to, and I'll move that unit where it continues to earn well, which I don't think we have to worry about as much with LoRa, although it's akin to, you have your LoRa unit in a city that's starts off not dense and gets super dense, like move that thing.
Yeah, and there's a big thing about it as well. It's like, if POC is done by mobile phones and verifying the coverage, then we need to know where the antennas are and how many antennas an install's got. For example, like you could be indoors with 5 antennas. You only map 2 of those. That's not a very good job, but we need somewhere being able to say, oh, there's 5 in this building. Go check them all. So it's really got to change for it to be worthwhile, because otherwise indoor hotspots just won't get mapped because they'll be guessing where they are and they won't work outside, So, yeah, there needs to be a lot more information to make the indoor ones work, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's a ton of questions about the whole thing, but I think that goes back to, why we have shows like this where we get to talk about it and let people know. Like, one of the things that came up this last week was how much nobody knows what's going on. Not nobody, is that everybody doesn't have a huge bucket of information. Like, it's not like the Helium Foundation or Nova knows everything and they know exactly how this thing is going to play out over the next 10 years and they're hiding the information. It's way more, this is my perspective, is that they're like, hey, we've taken a bunch of time to figure this out. We think this is the best way forward. we still have lots of unanswered questions. Here's the direction we're going, like who's with me kind of thing. But it could be the wrong direction. It could be that there's some big mistake. It could be that we have to make an adjustment as we go. And I think that's kind of the promise in general of participating in this thing, is that if we find a better way, we all can work together to take that direction and make it better and better. But it doesn't mean that from start to finish, we know exactly what's going on in every step and there's kind of a guaranteed perfect outcome. So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, cool.
It's fun moving forward. It's fun seeing these projects grow. You know, people. It's like people are always moaning that the _POC chain thing hasn't got a HIP yet. Well, there's no point creating a HIP until they know exactly how the system's going to work by developing it. Yeah, no, this is a conversation we were having yesterday, wasn't it? You know, it's like, you know, we're not sure of every implementation and every last little detail, but we know it's the right way to be headed. So, you know, we just got to work these bumps out as we go through them and as we realise there's these problems, you know.
Yeah, no, I love it. Love it. All right, folks, we're at 10:01, over by a minute. Any last pieces in there? Do we get an official statement from the Helium Foundation from Super Joey? Look at the stickers from Hotspot.
Anyone wants a sticker, just DM me or follow Hotspot on Twitter and then send the address. I will send like one of each. Just for fun.
Cool.
I love stickers.
Right on.
Cool. Yeah, no official statements other than it's just awesome seeing people stoked in the rest of the ecosystem. So I've got meetings in Tallinn this week of people who are building really cool shit.
And it's TALLINN. They thrown in a couple extra consonants in there just to make sure.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Love it. Well,
very
enjoy
cool
it
city.
Yep. Enjoy.
All right.
Thanks, folks, for coming on. Super good to see you. We will see you all next week. If you have any questions in the meantime, I think the best place to start is the Discord announcements in Helium to kind of keep an eye on what's going on and also to participate in the Helium Discord. If you got specific questions and you want them answered on shows like this, you can join the Gristle crew. You should definitely buy a tracker from Neil from TrackPack. C, not K at the end. Follow your hotspots on HotSpotty. And then if you want to know what's going on with the network on the data side and you're geeky, go look at heliumanalytics.io. And then Helium Foundation, which is what Joey is, who's Joey's employed by, is doing a bunch of super cool work with grants and just keeping the network generally stable. So follow all these people, rock and roll.
Awesome.
Thanks, fellas.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
We're out.
See you next time.
Cheers.